This is our podcast, The Working Poor. Hello, my name's Austin Phelps. I'm your host, and today I will be joined by Travis Washington, author of the Hands Up Act. So thank you so much for being with me tonight, Travis. How are you doing?
I could be better. I mean, today is a phenomenal day. Glad to be alive, but I'm happy that you called, Austin. We got a lot to decipher.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And I thank you for being here with me on such short notice. I know I didn't give you much time to prepare, but I'm glad you could be here with me tonight because, yeah, there's a lot that's going on. And yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that a lot of the country is kind of feeling some civil unrest amidst the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, three black individuals who were murdered by active United States police, with Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed by a former police officer, which we'll get into later. There's
Yeah.
so much going on and so many places to start. But before we do, I just want to clarify that there are many more people that have been victims of police brutality this year, and there are every year. We will never forget these people, and there's no way we would have the amount of time to list them all. So we will be focusing on these three individuals moving forward. But in 2019 alone, there were 1,004 people killed by the police. That number is up from the previous year and the previous year before that. So moving forward, we'll kind of go over Ahmaud's, Breonna's, and George's stories separate at first and kind of move through them one at a time. So each individual we are talking about gets equal amount of time they deserve before kind of generally talking about police reform as a whole. But before that,
Cool.
Travis, what are your overall thoughts on everything that is going on right now? And I know there's a lot, but if you could just kind of give some first thoughts on everything.
To be completely honest, so when I first saw the Ahmaud Arbery video, I thought to myself, this was just hunting. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't
Hmm.
even give him a person. It was hunting. Like, and I'm finding out videos where like people are using the excuse that he went to abandoned buildings, right? I
Hmm.
remember me and Rashawn, like in seventh grade, we used to do that all the time. Like everybody does that. When the thing is in America, when a white person murders somebody black, they try to find dirt on them. That's like what they did in lynchings in the beginning of time. You know the whole story where, oh, this black man raped somebody, so let's
Hmm.
lynch him. And when I saw that video, I was disturbed and disgusted, but not surprised because they felt like they can do that. Um, and then when I saw the Breonna Taylor video, I mean not video, when I heard about it, I was like, I didn't even know police can do no not raids. You know what I'm saying? Like they broke into her house. To me, I consider that a robbery. I thought that was against the Constitution or something. But I'm finding out that the Supreme Court like ruled a certain way to make this is okay. And I'm very supportive of like the military, and I understand when it's like comes to terrorist organizations where it's important. But like the police committed a crime there. They murdered somebody, and I'm so happy Breonna Taylor's boyfriend is out of jail. And then last but not least, the George Floyd video,
Hmm.
it he had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes. 9 minutes. To be honest with you, I didn't even watch the whole video, Austin. I don't know if you
Hmm.
could, but I didn't watch the whole video because I knew it was murder. But one thing is, I don't want to be happy off of
Hmm.
somebody's death because I never will support that. But one thing is that I gained 100,000 signatures within the past 5 days because of it. I met like
Oh
500 people.
my.
Yeah, exactly. So it tells you people mean business and they're not playing around.
And I
Exactly.
think that with everything that's going on lately, and just the reaction that I've kind of seen online, reading through comments and people just on my feed on Facebook, it seems like, in particular with the George Floyd situation, that people are outraged kind of across the board, whereas in previous circumstances, like with Eric Garner or even, with Trayvon Martin,
Mhm.
it seemed like people were more divided and more siding with the murderer rather than the victim. And it seems like now on both sides, left and the right, I think it's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Donald Trump has even kind of spoke out on George Floyd. So why do you think, if we're, kind of starting here with George Floyd, since he's kind of getting the most media attention right now, why do you think that there is this response across the board?
To me, to be completely honest, since the beginning, I think a lot of people in the way social media and mass media is, it makes it seem like we're more divided than we actually are. Like with the Trayvon Martin situation or in all the Eric Gardner situation, there are more people that are white that are supportive than we know. It's just when there's an institution, like I always said, the same people empowered during legalized enslavement are empowered today. So they have the ability to make us seem smaller than we actually are. And for example, with this George Floyd situation where you're seeing people from the left and the right, it was so blatantly, it was just murder. And people are, and
Mhm.
right now, it's not helping that we have 40 million people unemployed, so many people without jobs. It's just, it added to the chaos that he put his knee on them. Left or right, it shouldn't really matter. If something's wrong, is wrong. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't matter your political party. If you think something's wrong, it is wrong.
I completely agree. And going back to the video of George Floyd, I did, yeah, unfortunately, watch the thing in its entirety. It was very hard to. I felt the need to, witness it all because it's just like, this is, and I've, seen so many police brutality videos throughout the years. I mean, you were just on here a couple episodes ago, and we were talking about James King, and then all of this happens, and it's just a whole new flood. And for the first time, it really feels like there's change coming and that something's going to happen. So, continuing with George Floyd, his murderer, the one who had his knee on his neck, has officially been arrested. And I know that we've all been waiting for this, and people have been outraged, and there's been protests across the nation, not just with George Floyd, but with Breonna Taylor as well. And so, just since he's been arrested, the officer who murdered George Floyd, what do you think's next?
To me, to be honest, I'm going to give you two answers. One, people are not going to stop rioting because you know how a lot of people are saying rioting, what does it solve? Well, George Floyd's murderer was arrested. It took rioting in a couple of days for him to be arrested. And I think
Mhm.
that if I was Minnesota, if I was the governor, if I was the prosecutor, if I was the mayor, he has to go to jail because nobody can afford this to happen. Because what happens in Minnesota will transfer over throughout the whole country. Because I
Mhm.
remember watching the Arab Spring, one thing that turns out in Tunisia spread to Egypt, spread to Syria, it almost spread throughout the whole Middle East. So, I mean,
Mhm.
protests spreads, rioting spreads, liberation spreads. I would love to ask you what you think is next.
I know there has to be police reform. Like, we have to open up a conversation. There's been a lot of talk going on. Are there good cops? Considering this, and I think that that's a conversation we have to be having. And I understand that Derek Chauvin, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. That's officer that was kneeling on George Floyd's neck. His actions don't speak for all officers, but I think that there's a certain point, like, for example, when we saw this incident happen on the video that was posted online, we saw three other officers stand by as Derek had his knee on George's neck, suffocating him. And those officers are just as bad as Derek. And it brings a question of whether or not there can be any good cops, considering that cops that aren't doing these things are still enabling these hostile police officers by feeding into a system that has been built on oppressing people for years and their rights, in particular, black and brown and poor communities. And I think, like, moving forward, like, the system has to be called out. And to fully call out the system, we have to call out the people who enable them. And we just, like, I think, like, there needs to be a complete overhaul of the police force. And George Floyd is a perfect example right now how in the United States the police aren't, like, here to help us, but they're here to jail you, to profile you, and then ultimately they're deciding people's punishment as they see fit. So, like, I've never, for one, understood. So we have lawyers and they have to go to school for 8 years, and they have to have a basic understanding of the law just so they can like represent their client. But our police, who we trust to interact with many people from many different backgrounds, they're there to enforce that same law, and they get away with only 3 months of schooling. So I think we all know that there must be some form of police, but we need to look at what that means in today's sense. I think like moving forward, like if we look at Europe, 90% of the police walk around and they don't have a firearm. Their cars aren't blacked out with tinted windows. They're bright, they're
Yes, yes.
blue, and they're noticeable. We want the police to be
That's
there to help us. We want the police
that's
to be there. Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
I'm so sorry. I'm as excited as you are because that's scary when I see like what that's scary when a police officer's in this mobile
Mhm.
where you can hide. Like I don't want you to hide. I want to know that I can come to you for safety and for comfort. Like and
Mhm.
when I see, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I did get caught speeding, right? And that's
Mhm.
when I got caught speeding. They were in regular police cars. I'm finding out. I'm seeing these
Sure.
vehicles that are like regular cars, like you and me. Like it's scary that you could just hop up and pull me over. Like you need to be in a regular police car. And I don't know if that's done on purpose or not. I mean, actually, no, it is done on purpose. Like I should not be scared of the police. And to go back, like you said, like people are questioning if there's good cops. You know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. There are good cops. It's just they're stuck in a system where the people who abuse people are either sergeants and corporals are way up high, right? And if they
Mhm.
don't behave in a certain manner, they might not keep their job. So we
Mhm.
have to change the system from the outside. And we got to
Mhm.
punish those officers who commit these horrible crimes before they move up. Like the man you said who murdered George Floyd, I found out, I don't know if it's 100% true, but he killed somebody back in 2008.
Oh, I've seen online that he's had over, I think, yeah, I've read somewhere like 17 incidents. I don't know the exact number, but multiple incidents against him.
Exactly. And this is my thing is, you said 17. Let's just say it is 17, right? This is a systematic problem that has to be changed from the outside. And that's why I don't care what anybody says about the rioters. In San Francisco, if they can riot over a damn baseball game, then we can riot over somebody losing their life. Because this is the thing about George Floyd. We only know he died because it was recorded. If
Mhm.
it was not recorded, would it still have the same intensity?
Oh, and they would not. I mean, look at all these incidents up until this point. There's police brutality. Like I said, I'm watching videos on this all the time, and it's never gotten this traction because it's just was so blatantly recorded, like you're saying, completely.
Yeah.
Like everybody witnessed this. The whole world saw it.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And then the sad thing is, this is nothing new. Like I told people, Malcolm X held up a newspaper in 1963 saying 7 unarmed Negroes shot unarmed, right? If Malcolm X held up a newspaper in 1963 saying 7 people are shot unarmed, then there's clearly people being shot unarmed to this day. And you don't even need a lot of evidence. And you know what's the sad thing? Because we like to make jokes on things that are tragic. Like I was watching this one comedy thing taking place in 1992, and they were making police brutality jokes. I'm
mhm.
like, so we've always known. It's whether or not we punish people.
Oh, completely. And when and like when we're talking about police brutality and how it like disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities, I mean, this goes back to segregation days when everything was segregated and it was policed, and it goes back to lynchings, and that's what has happened here, especially like in Ahmaud Arbery's case, where he was chased down by two men, the McMichaels, and he was shot, and that's premeditated murder. And just going back real quick, Travis, to the riots you're bringing up, it's just interesting because Donald Trump calling the people out that are being, I guess, destructive. I don't want to, paint these people in a negative light, because I just fully believe that they're doing this because they're upset, and this is frustration. And how are they supposed to act in these situations when we just a couple weeks ago had white people that were protesting the
Yeah.
opening of our government in a pandemic, and they were armed, and these people aren't armed, and there are videos of these armed people that were white pushing up against police officers.
Because what those militants did in the Capitol building is unacceptable. And the governor's response, not to send in the National Guard, is disturbing and disgusting. But when you have people in Minnesota protesting against Black death, that tells you we have an institution that I've been saying that's been around since after slavery. Let's make sure that we've called the National Guard when the country is against our own best interests. But when the country's in our best interest, like, them open up the government, the only people that benefit right now are the top 1%. None of us benefit if the government opens up if all this stuff opens up, if we get sick, nobody benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? These trillionaires just need to keep on making their money.
So also going now into Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And his recent kind of tweets that he's had on this situation.
Yeah,
And I actually want to pop
I didn't
them
even know
up.
it was real. I thought it was fake. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you talking about the tweet where he's like, if these protesters steal, you start shooting or something?
Yeah. And the main part of, I have it right here, which
Yeah.
this part I think has been deleted. I'm on his Twitter page and I can't find this part. I actually had to Google for a picture of a screenshot, but it states, "These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen." Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way, any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. And since then, Travis, I don't know, he did make another tweet when he says, kind of, I guess, redacting this, 6 hours ago, he says, "Looting leads to shooting. And that's why a man was shot and killed in Minneapolis on Wednesday night. Or look at what just happened in Louisville with 7 people shot. I don't want this to happen." And that's what the expression put out last night means. It was spoken as a fact, not a statement. It's very simple. Nobody should have any problem with this other than the haters and those looking to cause trouble on social media. Honor the memory of George Floyd. So he's like going back and trying to say, this is what I meant when, like, we know what he meant. He seemed to be threatening to use military force to go out and basically shoot these protesters. Am I getting that wrong, or is that what you got too?
You're absolutely right. And let me say something. There are people with itchy trigger fingers. You know that. And there are people who are just down for Trump. Like, there's people who are down for Obama, Clinton, all these other presidents. But now Trump, there are people who are down for him, ready with itchy trigger fingers, knowing that there's no consequence. Austin, when I woke up and I saw that, I'm a very patient person. I'm the type of person that, like, okay, let me give it some time, because, like I said, I'm the type of person, if I read it, let me check somewhere else before I confirm. I saw it was bump up on Facebook. I'm like, I know the president said some wild things, but he wouldn't say something like that. So I waited and waited. And then once I saw it like the 5th or 4th time on Facebook, I was like, okay, it's real. And then when I checked on Twitter, and I scrolled past it too, because Twitter blocked it. I was wondering what they blocked. And then when I saw that, I was like, this dude is going to get more people killed. And then that comment was so disturbing and disgusting. And you know what I thought? It felt like we were living in Italy during Mussolini's time. It felt like we were one of those dictatorships that we worry about in different countries. You know what I'm saying? Like, we already saw a news reporter get arrested yesterday. Then you post this. Yeah, I'm not the biggest CNN fan in the world, but I know if you arrest a major journalist like that, that's a problem.
You're talking about Omar Jimenez, being arrested.
After the arrest, then he posts something like this. That's insane.
He responded to that too today on CNN, and he ended up saying that the police officer, he was just telling the police officer as he was being carried away that he was just doing his job, as the police officer was, just doing his job. And the police officer responded saying something like, "Man, I'm just following orders." And I think that is just so telling. These orders, that he's following, like, this shouldn't be how we're reacting by arresting reporters who are, reporting on the news. So before George Floyd's murderer was arrested, this reporter was arrested.
Yeah. That is so telling to the problem that we have here. It's
Yeah.
it's you know what? It's crazy times, but this is a wake up call for people for 2020. And the thing is, like, I know people were complaining about what Biden said, like, if you're black, what's the word I'm looking for? If you vote for Trump, you ain't black. I'm gonna tell you
Hmm.
something. I'm not offended by that at all. I know people are like he needs to be sensitive to people's race, but I'm like, Trump is a Klansman. What black person do you know will vote for a Klansman besides one
Hmm.
who thinks he can get a benefit from it? Because what we just saw Trump tweet yesterday, I'm like, bring that same energy that you had against Joe Biden. Because there's no, like, I hate when people say the better of two evils. What the hell? When has Joe Biden been
Hmm.
evil? Trump is clearly evil. He repealed the Clean Water Act. 2 million people lost their health insurance. He almost started a war with Iran. I mean, what more evidence do you need that this man is not for you? Um, because right now there are certain people's economic situations are so desperate, and we've been manipulated by media to, divide us in half, but we want the same things. I don't want to say all Republicans are racist. I don't believe that. But I'm like, what's going through your mind? Are tax cuts that's so important that's worth locking kids up in cages? Is it tax cuts so important that it's okay to shoot unarmed black people? Like, what is so important for you to make sure that you're okay with somebody like this? Okay.
So just going into Breonna Taylor
Yeah.
and her story of how police officers entered her home and with a no-knock warrant, and her boyfriend fired at them because he did not know who was entering his house. And now there's been 911 audio leaked. I don't know if you got a chance to look over that, but where he called 911 and obviously didn't know who the hell was in his house, that, he did not know they were police. And like, this is just a natural response that anybody would do. And then, they obviously fired multiple shots and killed his girlfriend, Breonna Taylor. And I just know that, like, in the media and everything, and I feel like more recently there has been more talk of her, but why do you think that she is kind of being left out of the mainstream media conversation? I know even trying to find articles on her, there wasn't a lot until like the protests started happening with her. Now 7 people were shot at a protest, and that's getting a lot of coverage. But why do you think that she's kind of fallen behind in the conversation?
I want to say she didn't fall behind because think about it. It's just there's so many names. I still remember
Hmm.
her. You still remember her. So she's still in the atmosphere. It's just what happened in Minnesota. It has the press coverage because of the rioting. Remember, we were focused on Breonna Taylor for a very long time. We were focused on Ahmaud Arbery. It's just that the next thing happened, and now this happened. We still have all three of those names in our head. I don't feel like she, went into the background. I understand what you're saying. It just is that what is the most recent news happens to get coverage. But I think it's more of a sign of relief that her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, I believe, is not in jail. I think
Hmm.
that's why it became more lax because it's like, what was he doing in jail? Because I think this brings up an incredibly important topic because if these police officers got away with this, then they're just going to do that to the next home and the next home. It could be your home, it could be my home. Like, like, come on now. They can't just break into people's homes like this. And I'm like, warrants need to be mandatory. And if they don't find anything, who gets punished for that? Because I
Hmm.
was watching in the war in California when they were doing the war on drugs, and they broke these people's houses in California, like destroy houses, didn't find any drugs. Where do those people live now? Like it's absolutely insane. But I wouldn't say she's not forgotten. It's the most recent death. Like she's still in my heart. She's still in your heart. She's in a lot of people's hearts.
I guess if we're, just, looking forward, it seems like, hopefully, there will finally be change. And do you feel that like this, like, the response now is, greater than it's been before? Do you think, like, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that, there will be change after this?
Yes, the George Floyd situation is the greatest example because now people are seeing because I don't know if this is 100% true, but like they said protesters are outside George Floyd's house. Now, these bad, if I'm a good cop and I'm seeing that, that means we got to get rid of these bad cops because
Mhm.
now I'm involved. Now I'm associated with this man. And if I was doing my job of blocking somebody off and I see a dude get shot behind me and they record my family's life is on the line. So there's going to be change. The Ahmaud Arbery, if this court case doesn't go as planned, or Breonna Taylor, if their murderers aren't thrown in jail, there's going to be serious consequences. Like Minnesota was spread to Kentucky, Kentucky to Georgia. Like, I mean, riots happen. The most liberal states in the country with the most criminal justice reform are New Jersey, New York, California, and Illinois, right? The most brown and black representation. Guess what happened in those 4 states? The brown and black people rioted. The states that didn't riot don't have that type of voting accessibility or access to healthcare or access to jobs like these other states.
Mhm.
So rioting happens. I mean, it causes change. There's no other answer. If you don't believe it causes change, you're part of a system and you don't want to be held responsible.
So with your Hands Up Act, when we're talking about Breonna Taylor's situation, how, like, if your Hands Up Act were in play during this situation where police officers, entered her home and used excessive force and, with a firearm, and killed her, would that apply, and how would that kind of work?
See, that church situation as a whole is so peculiar because my
Mhm.
Hands Up Act is if you shoot somebody unarmed, right? I didn't even know the police can break into people's homes. That's going to take a lot of time of me talking to congressional aides and state legislative aides to talk about how we can form in a way to protect people like that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just, you know what I'm saying? Am I answering like it's such a peculiar situation? Like they broke into somebody's home. I defend myself, but Breonna Taylor was still shot an arm. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Why
Mhm.
were you in that house in the first place? That's going to take a lot of legislative uh, writing to make sure to break down how we can protect the next victim, how we can make sure they're held accountable.
And completely, and I just think that that just opens up the conversation too to how you're talking about. This is just so like layered to for lack
Yeah.
of better terms, but there are so many just areas of this, and one law just cannot completely cover it all, and there are just
Yes.
new cases coming forward all the time, new situations, and they're not new, they've been done. It's a like a playbook they use. They're going from my waistband, they're resisting. George Floyd, they said he was resisting. Then we see the video before he was arrested and he wasn't resisting at all. And yeah, it's just very, yeah, I keep saying disturbing, but I don't know how else to word it.
No.
Um,
I mean, there's no other words for it. And to go with you were saying, I'm so glad you're understanding of this is going to take the Hands Up Act. I think, yeah, I know I wrote it, but we're going to need a lot of legislative aids to make sure every single detail is covered. Because I'm like breaking into somebody's house is just
mhm.
it's insane. It's ludicrous. It's every word I could think of to describe in the thesaurus dictionary. I mean, there's no words for it, and I'm glad that my petition is growing because, like I said, this past week, 5 days, 100,000 signatures. That tells you people are upset and they're angry and they believe in something.
And you said you got 100,000 new signatures on it?
Yeah, within 5 days.
That is insane. It just shows completely, like you said, yes, people are outraged, and I'm so glad. And I just, yeah, I cannot, like, the work that you're doing, like, for this cause and everything. Yeah, I can just imagine that, like, when, like, we're seeing how long already it takes to even have an officer arrested. It's been
Yeah,
days. And
yes,
there was multiple videos put out, and they want to be short. And so with a law where you're handling because you know situations are individual, so I can completely understand that. Yes, like, one law might not pertain to every situation. There's got to be different. And yes, and like in this situation, her boyfriend was armed, but it was self-defense, and she wasn't armed and she died. But it's like, yeah, her boyfriend should have also been able to be armed because the police were breaking in, and he should have expected the police not to use that force. And so it's just,
mhm,
it goes into so many things,
yeah. And my thing
completely.
And Kentucky's an open carry state, I believe, because
Mhm.
don't forget, in Kentucky, what happened in Michigan happened in Kentucky as well, where militants came in with guns.
And I wonder too with, Breonna Taylor, considering her situation is kind of even more systematic in a way. Like there's so much more there, like you're saying, with can police enter your house and stuff like this goes down a whole other path of discussion that
Awesome.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but when the police entered to her house, you know what the first thought I did? When I went to bed at night, I got scared. I'm like, are the police going to enter my house now?
Mhm.
Like, do they have that? Like, I never had that worry when I went to bed at night until after the Breonna Taylor case, where I'm like, I'm scared. I mean, I don't want to say I'm scared, but I was like, actually had to think about it. I'm like, can they break into my house and do I defend myself? I go to prison?
Mhm.
Like that situation is an important thing that we have to answer, and we have to change that. That's like, I know I'm focused on, like, the mandatory sentencing with the hands of that, but after that, if I have time, when I have the strength, that's going to be the next issue. Police should not be able to do that.
If a George Floyd's murderer, Derek, does not is not it does not end up being convicted of these charges, that's setting precedent for police in general. Not just policing against black people or brown people, but policing against everybody. If the police get away with this, then how are they going to treat, just how are they, doing their job moving forward, and how are they doing their job now? And this whole thing needs to be assessed because it does ultimately affect everybody, and it's just very frightening. And just, yeah, a conversation that I feel like, has been going on for such a long time, but is just now finally getting this mainstream attention it needs. But it is so sad that some people are kind of being left out of it.
Yeah, and then that's what I want. Because the thing is, this is how crazy how many shootings there are. Because during our meeting, I mean, you didn't do it on accident. I didn't do it on accident, on purpose. I mean, we both didn't do it on purpose either. But we forgot about Sean Reed. We were focused on Breonna, George, and Breonna, George, and Ahmaud Arbery. That's insane.
Mhm.
And one thing that I heard people say, "Oh, why was he running from the police? Why was he going 100 miles per hour? Why was he cursing?" That's BS, because the militants in the Michigan Capitol building set the precedent. If I can have a machine gun and shut down the state legislator and not get shot in the arm or punished, then I should not be executed for running from the police.
Mhm.
I it, those militants in the Michigan and Kentucky set a precedent that this is a racist institution that needs to change. I mean, there's no excuse.
And I completely agree. And there have just been, yeah, so many excuses thrown out there for so many years. And now with these arrests, we want to see, obviously, moving forward, the other three officers in George Floyd's case charged, and then Breonna Taylor's killers also charged. So there's still so much more work to do. I know, your Hands Up Act hasn't even been passed, so there's still work. The fact that we don't even have that in there. We don't have any real police brutality legislation, anti-police brutality legislation in there. And just, yeah, it's just great that you're out there doing that work. And like I said, I've just really appreciated having you on here tonight, and thank you for coming and such, like coming on the show on such kind of short like notice. I'm kind of like rambling now, but anyways, just to get some final thoughts from you, Travis, just for the show and everything, like what are your kind of final thoughts moving forward?
First, I want to say God bless you, Austin, for fighting for what you believe in, and thank you for having me on. Um, I'm going to continue to push the Hands Up Act until it reaches 1 million signatures. We are in a time where we have nothing to lose. I'm going to be real with you. 1/3 of Bangladesh is underwater. We have Egypt and Ethiopia might go to war over the Nile River because of the lack of flow. So we have a climate crisis. We have a war crisis where we're spending $110 billion in arms in Saudi Arabia, where they're dropping it on other people. So we have a migrant refugee problem where people are running into other countries, and then we're leaving in the ocean to die after destabilizing these nations. So now that we're in here and domestically, the most powerful country in the world has its own problem. And that right now, currently, is police violence, and it's going to take people like Bob Marley say, the people to stand up and fight for the rights. Get up, stand up, fight for your rights, and don't give up the fight. It's going to take people like you to continue to keep on fighting, whether it's 10, 100, or 1,000 views, but you got to keep on doing what you're doing because it's raising a level of consciousness. And that's the most important part.
Oh, and God, Travis, so well said. And you keep thanking me, but I just have to say thank you again
Mhm.
because what you're doing is just, volumes more than I could ever, that I'm doing right now. And we really appreciate you and the 100,000 signatures on top of like the 500,000 I think you said you had. I'm just so glad to hear that, you are just growing and, that this cause is continuing. And it's just, it's so crazy and unfortunate at the same time that you're just here, about a month ago, and we were talking about James King, and now
Yeah.
just look at the escalation since.
Has it really been a month?
It's been, a month, a little over it. Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry. I know
think.
you're trying to wrap it up. I'm sorry. I know you're trying to wrap it up, but it's been four bodies in 1 month. Think about
Mm,
that. 4 bodies in 1 month, and these are the bodies that we know about.
that have been recorded, and
Yeah.
but yeah, what about even just the small things about, police, just pulling people over, and maybe they go home that night, but maybe they were roughed up a little bit that day.
Yep.
So there's just so many small things that aren't talked about, and it's like, some police officers have body cams, and then, like, look at the George Floyd body cam. I don't know if you got to see that video, but it was redacted. It showed nothing. It didn't even show, I don't really think, George Floyd in that video. It's like, why did they release that? There were people blacked out in it. There was audio removed from it. When we get a body cam released in the midst of a murder that has caused such civil unrest, we want the whole version, unedited, uncut. At that point, you're serving the public. There is no privacy. When a reporter is filing, like, for Freedom of Information Act through the state, they get it, because there's, transparency there. And when we're paying police officers, to be there for us, and they're not there for us, and me and you right now and so many other people around the nation right now are having to have a conversation of, can we trust the police? Yeah, we need the police there to help us, and we want them to be there for when someone is screaming that they can't breathe in George Floyd's case, so that they can help that person and make sure they have the proper medical care that they need to survive. But we see these police officers, and they're not out there seeking justice. They're out there as licensed murderers carrying guns, and they're being hostile and aggressive.